A few weeks ago, I made my first trip to Dorney Park in Allentown, Pennsylvania. I had a pretty good day here, and I was able to get on all of their coasters without too much trouble. The lineup is pretty strong, but the park layout is kinda weird. There were several areas that just felt like dead ends or something was missing, like back by Steel Force or over next to Possessed. So anyway, here's Iron Menace. Dorney Park has long been overlooked in the Cedar Fair chain when it comes to new additions, but the years of patience have paid off with the recent announcement of Iron Menace, a new B&M dive coaster. This will be taking over the plot that was formerly occupied by Stinger, the short-lived Vekoma inverted boomerang, and this area has been in dire need of something new for a while, but the experience won't be limited to just the coaster. In a surprise move from Cedar Fair, this new attraction will bring along a considerable amount of theming, both to the queue and the surrounding area, so let's take a close look and see what the park has shown off so far. Iron Menace looks to be one of the most compact dive coasters ever built, confining itself to just the former Stinger plot and a small area on the other side of the Zephyr tracks, and at 160 feet tall, it's certainly not the tallest. 160 feet is obviously nothing to laugh at, however I do find it funny that Possessed, the 23-year-old coaster right next door, will still be taller. Glad to see that sticking around in the renders too. That's a Geauga Lake coaster right there, and I hope they keep it around for as long as possible. While the layout of Iron Menace looks familiar at first glance, it gets more unique as the experience goes along. Of course the train will hang you over the edge for a few seconds at the top, and you'll then plunge down the 152-foot drop before heading into an Immelman. I think it's a rule that every dive coaster has to have an Immelman after the drop, well except for Oblivion since that was the first one. Afterwards, the train passes over the station through a zero-G roll, and here's where things start to get interesting. For the first time since the days of their stand-up coasters, B&M are bringing back the inclined loop. It might not look like much in the POV, but it's such a weird feeling compared to your standard vertical loop, so I'm really happy to see this brought back. I've only ever been on the one on Rougarou at Cedar Point, and I also rode it when it was Menace, and let's just say if it's anything like this one, this will probably be my favorite part of the ride. Once you exit the loop, the train heads immediately into a corkscrew over the brake run, and then there's only a sharp left turn remaining before you hit the brakes. A short layout, but it looks to be a pretty sweet one all things considered. The layout though is only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this coaster. Iron Menace will also feature an abundance of theming to go along with it, and that includes its own backstory. It centers around the steel industry that the area used to be known for, and this does sort of tie into the local area with the Bethlehem steel stacks not far away. The story centers around a greedy steel baron, no not that baron, named Hiram McTavish, who owned a competing steel mill. Wanting to maximize profits over everything else, he created a gigantic steel transporter he called the Iron Menace, which becomes the coaster that riders board. Soon after, however, McTavish disappeared without a trace, and with its owner nowhere to be found, the mill soon closed its doors for good. Now, roughly a century later, the rusted, crumbling remains of the mill serve as the backdrop for the somehow still operational Iron Menace. Riders enter the derelict mill, ushered aboard by ghostly steelworkers, where a beyond vertical drop awaits them. Oh, did I forget to mention that? The drop on Iron Menace is 95 degrees, so beyond vertical. Steeper than Valraven, which I've also been on, and that drop is insane enough as it is, vest restraints notwithstanding. This may sound weird, but the theming might just be what I'm most excited about for Iron Menace. I'm a sucker for a good backstory and immersive theming, and while I'm not expecting this to be Disney level or anything, I am curious to see what Dorney will do here. Obviously the station will be themed, and I want to call attention to this part seen in the renders, where Zephyr's track passes right through a tunnel next to the station. I wonder if there's going to be a show scene in there, who knows? That might not be the only show scene either, as Zephyr's track loops around the entire area and between the supports of the coaster. For nerds like myself, just imagine all the camera angles you'll be able to get of this thing just by taking a ride on Zephyr. They did close down Zephyr for the construction, but the walls were already up when I visited. The whole area surrounding the coaster is also being rethemed to tie into the abandoned steel mill, and this includes the flyers next door and the pre-existing haunt maze, which will have a new name this Halloween. You know what else I noticed? Dorney must really have a thing for the color orange. Wild Mouse is orange, then you have Talon right at the front of the park, and now this. If I have to complain about something, it looks a little too similar to Valraven and Yukon Striker, but I guess the orange is supposed to represent the molten steel. By the way, I know they can't make it exactly like the renders, but if the park could add some sort of lighting effect at the base of the drop to make it resemble this part of the announcement video, that would be amazing. I'm also a fan of the name. You see, that's how you make a cool sounding coaster name. Take that, Top Thrill 2. I honestly couldn't tell you the last time I was this excited for a dive coaster. Even when Valraven was announced, I just kinda shrugged and said, yeah, that'll be a crowd pleaser. But with this, the theming is what makes it so much more exciting to me. I love being immersed in the story behind an attraction, and I can't wait to see what Dorney does with this. That inclined loop is just the icing on the cake for me. There are certainly other coaster models I would have loved to see here, but as the first ground-up coaster Dorney has received since 2005, this is no doubt a welcome addition. I think everyone was expecting Hershey Park to add PA's first dive coaster. I remember there being rumors about that a couple years ago, so who knows, might be a bit of a shake-up among the PA parks. We'll have to wait and see. Now that we've looked at it, feel free to let me know your thoughts on Iron Menace down in the comments. You know I'll be doing everything I can to make it to Dorney once it opens next year. Until then, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time here on Rampaging Rex Productions for more inversions and roller coaster coverage.